President Trump, put your message to Vladimir Putin, sir. President Trump.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to have President Zelensky of Ukraine. And we've been working very hard, very close. So we've actually known each other for a long time. We've been dealing with each other for a long time and very well.
Look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
He occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now the President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people, you know? What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
About the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
I'm not
you're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influenced.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influenced.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. Yeah, you're playing cards.
Mr. President.
You're playing cards.
Serious.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. It's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A lot of times.
No, in this entire meeting, you said thank you.
Even today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I answer?
No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
you
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through the stupid president, $350 billion. We gave you military equipment, and you men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment,
if
you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks. Of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this, I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times.
10 fiery minutes between Donald Trump, Volodymyr Zelensky and JD Vance, and the world is in a state of complete disbelief, ladies and gentlemen. Ukrainian president was hoping for positive talks and signing a rare minerals deal. But what happened, what you just saw, was him literally facing a dressing down in front of the cameras. There were verbal blows. The scheduled press conference got cancelled as well. In fact, US Vice President JD Vance demanded that Ukraine should show more gratitude for years of US support. It started with tense moments, as you just saw, between Vance and Ukrainian president. But when Zelensky said, during the war, everybody has problems, even you. But you have a nice ocean and don't feel now. But you will feel it in the future. That's when Donald Trump got angry and said, don't tell us what we are going to feel. You are in no position to dictate that. And after that, Trump told reporters that Zelensky overplayed his hand and can come back when he is ready for peace. Hours later, Zelensky put out a number of posts on social media platform X saying America's support is vital in fight against Russia. So the question on the Newshour Special Edition this Saturday evening we are asking is, after this heated exchange, what next? What next for Ukraine? What next for the Russia-Ukraine war? And what next for Donald Trump? Let's find out. Joining us on the broadcast are my guests. We have with us Dr. Swasti Rao, who is non-resident fellow, Eastern Circles, Ashok Sajjanhar, former ambassador. We have Fred Weir, who is a Russian expert and a journalist, Volodymyr Solovian, who is PhD in philosophy, head of department at the Ukraine Crisis Media Center, Peter Kuznick, author, also joining us live right now. Good evening to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now. Before we dive deeper into what next, we all just got a glimpse once again of what happened late last night. In one word, I want to ask each one of you, how will you like to describe, in your words, what happened inside the Oval Office? Not more than 1 or 2 words. That's a request for each one of you. Let's begin with Dr. Swasti Rao.
Well, what happened in the Oval House was, I would not say it is completely unexpected, because Donald Trump has been making a lot of these statements and then backtracking. But it did show that President Zelensky had come unprepared. And very quickly, I think it is high time for President Zelensky to understand that if he cannot appeal to intelligence, because there seems to be very less intelligence around Trump right now, he should have appealed to his vanity.
Okay. Ambassador Sajjanhar, in one word, how will you describe what you saw in the Oval Office last night?
Shocked and appalled.
Shocked and appalled. Okay. Fred Weir?
It was a remarkable spectacle, and it also is quite destructive brand of diplomacy. I don't know where we go from here.
Okay. Volodymyr Solovian?
It looked like an attempt by Volodymyr Zelensky to put all in into the attempt to receive security guarantees from the United States in return for signing the agreement regarding rare materials.
Okay. Peter Kuznick, one word, how will you describe what you heard just now, what you saw late last night?
Disaster.
Disaster.
It was disaster for those of us who are hoping that this process would lead to peace.
Well, we all were hoping that some kind of a deal will be signed and maybe things will start moving forward, but nothing of that sort happened. The world today is in a state of shock. You've called it disaster. Now, Dr. Swasti Rao, what happened we all saw. We heard it once again. I want to ask you, what next for Ukraine? Have we moved away from even a possibility of a peaceful resolution now between Russia and Ukraine?
So, well, very quickly, there is no possibility of a peaceful resolution between Russia and Ukraine right now. I think one has to understand the narrative setting versus the reality on the ground. Please know that Ukraine definitely needs American support, and one sees it very clearly that Ukraine, in order to be in this fight, in this war, needs American support, and was bullied by, in full public view by, Trump and Vance at the Oval House just a few hours ago. But despite that, Ukraine will not sign up for a deal unless there is a possibility of security guarantees. And I think a lot of point that people miss is that I have read the draft of the reworked draft of the minerals deal. And the 10th point of that minerals draft, it has 2 parts. And the second part actually says that United States of America will support Ukraine in getting security guarantees. It does not clarify from whom, okay, or doesn't clarify the basis or the conditions, etc. I don't think right now we can think of a ceasefire. A ceasefire has been broken already about more than 24 times, and it's very much a part of history that we actually teach and study and research on East European security architecture.
Okay.
In that sense, Zelensky has a point when he says that a ceasefire by itself doesn't mean anything. But I think what he should have read between the lines is that Donald Trump kept insisting that the sheer fact of America being present as a stakeholder, as an investor in those regions is a de facto security guarantee. So perhaps there was a wordplay, perhaps that's why I said that President Zelensky should have been better prepared, because you don't go out there and talk in a way when it is your situation which is more vulnerable. But does that mean that Ukraine is going to agree to a ceasefire or capitulate? That is not happening. I've gone to Ukraine many times and I've spoken to not only the politicians, but people on the ground, the military, the veterans, the wounded soldiers. They have been fighting for something for 3 years. So definitely they will not capitulate. It's sad, but...
Interesting. Yeah. You're saying that Ukraine does need American support, something that even Zelensky has mentioned in the number of posts that he put out hours after what happened inside the Oval Office. Peter Kuznick, now despite the tense moments in a showdown, Zelensky has been on a thanking spree on social media. He even said that he's ready to sign the minerals agreement. Support of US president is crucial. Now the question is, will Donald Trump get back on a negotiation table with Zelensky? Who will really bring them back on the table? Because as Swasti Rao was mentioning, that security guarantee was mentioned in the draft. Was Zelensky actually underprepared for this kind of a meeting?
Zelensky saw what happened when Macron came, when Starmer came, when Callas tried to come. They come there and they grovel and they propitiate Trump and they flatter him and they, praise him for what he's achieving. And Zelensky didn't play that game. And Trump and Vance demanded that. The situation on the battlefield for Ukraine is pretty abjectly terrible right now. And they're in a weak position. Trump kept saying, you have a weak hand, you have no cards to play. And the problem for Ukraine is that they are in a very weak position, even when they were getting the military and other assistance from the United States and Europe. So, and the situation is a disaster, humanitarian disaster, as we've all seen. So Trump was correct in trying to push for diplomacy at this point, which we didn't see for several years. However, the way he's going about it is so inept. As with everything else he tries to do, he's so incompetent, and there's so little diplomatic experience there. You saw Rubio cringing as this discussion was going on. So clearly Vance was primed to jump as soon as he had a chance to pounce on Zelensky. And then Zelensky responded, and then Trump jumped on him also. So this is really going to set things back. But it's possible that now that Zelensky is apologizing or effectively being so thankful to the United States and wanting to come back, it's possible that we get back on a diplomacy path, because Trump has forgiven a lot of people over the years. Yes. If they come and they kiss the ring and they praise him and they flatter him, he's willing to accept them back in the fold, as with Vance, who called him a Hitler, right, several years ago. And now Vance is his vice president. And so he lets people back. Rubio, they joked about who had bigger hands as a metaphor for something else. And now he's his Secretary of State. So this is not necessarily over, but it's going to be a rocky path.
Okay, it's going to be a rocky path. Volodymyr Solovian, many today are also saying that why did Zelensky go to the White House? Was he expecting something different, given that Trump had just called him a dictator, and then US united with Russia to vote against the resolution at UNGA?
Yes, I think that the initial goal was really to sign the agreement regarding rare materials, but in exchange, Volodymyr Zelensky tried to get some explanations how Mr. Trump is viewing his attempts to stop Putin in his attempts to interfere further and conquer further Ukrainian lands. So there were many statements by American president and new administration regarding the ceasefire, but still we do not, even after several meetings between presidents from Kremlin and United States, we do not obtain any clarity regarding how America will try to push Russia regarding stopping the war. Right now, we are witnessing that Mr. Trump is trying to put all the responsibility on Ukrainian side, but in fact, this is a gesture. This is signifying that United States does not obtain enough leverage on the Moscow to stop the war.
Okay. Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar, what we saw in the Oval Office, in your opinion, who is really, going to benefit from all of this? The way Europe has come out backing Ukraine against Trump, it has also put the spotlight on the looming crisis between US and Europe. What can be the possible fallout of what we have witnessed?
Yeah, thank you, Heena. I think this is basically what happened in the Oval Office. It was a lose-lose proposition for both the parties, because I think ultimately what should have been done, what President Zelensky came there was, in addition to the mineral deal that he was going to sign, he also wanted some specific security guarantees. Of course, Mr. Trump's position is just the fact that we are going to be present is a security guarantee in itself. But I think Mr. Zelensky wanted something more specific and something, that would be reflected in the document. What I really feel, Heena, is that the whole format, in the manner in which this whole thing takes place, is, in my view, needs a relook and a revision, because Mr. Zelensky comes in and they straight go and confront the media. There should be a one-to-one interaction between the two principals. They should sign the deal. After everything is done, then they should go and confront the media. That is what happens everywhere. It never happens that you sort of, let yourself open to the wolves. And, the media will try to ask you provocative questions. Meaning I'm not casting any aspersion on you as a media person, but that is the role of the media. That's the job of the media, and the media will ask you these provocative questions. And then one slip of the tongue, like for Mr. Zelensky, it was that you will also feel it. You have an ocean, but you will also feel the impact of the war. And I think that is what really flipped President Trump, and he sort of said what he started saying. If the whole thing had been done beforehand, they'd had a conversation, they'd had the signing ceremony, they'd had a lunch, and then they had come, they would have sort of, been able to deal with it very effectively. Going forward, I think it is in the interest of both sides. Mr. Zelensky wants to sign it because, he had said that this is a victory plan, because, he will make them, the United States, invested in Ukraine economy, in Ukrainian stability. So he definitely wants to sign the deal. And it is in the interest of Mr. Trump that he wants, as he says, the billions and billions of dollars for America. We have oil, gas, we don't have rare earths. So he will get those rare earths. So I think it has the possibility and potential of a win-win proposition. And I'm sure sooner rather than later, they will come back to it. And there are leaders in Europe. Starmer has just gone there. Macron has just gone there. They have had a conversation. I'm sure they will sort of, put in a word with Trump. And Mr. Zelensky has already, I think, repeated it 1,000 times that I'm thankful, because this is something that...
There was a report, in fact, which did a fact check.
You have not thanked us enough.
Yes, so in fact, there was a report which suggested that 33 times since
Yes.
I think January 22 or something, that Zelensky has thanked United States of America for all the support that they have been providing Ukraine.
You know, but Heena, maybe not in that meeting that they had in the Oval Office.
Yes.
If he had started with it, thank you very much. I hope Mr. Trump and particularly Mr. Vance are going to be mollified by all these
Yes.
expressions of gratitude.
Absolutely. But Fred Weir, Russian FM spokeswoman, said Zelensky's outrageous behavior confirms he's dangerous to the world community. The question is, will Putin now just wait and watch what happens next? Or will he do something? Can Russia really trust Donald Trump, given the history that we have seen between Russia and the United States of America? Because like what we heard Ambassador Sajjanhar also mentioned, that perhaps very soon we will see both of them coming back to the negotiation table.
Yes, I think the Russians have 4 years of experience with Trump. It was pretty much a clown show from the Russian point of view. Things got worse. So they don't have high expectations. On the other hand, the diplomatic track between Moscow and Washington is going very well right now, and it will continue. I think we've got our noses in this mess right now, but actually there is a summit coming up between Trump and Putin. Hopefully it will be a much better prepared kind of meeting, because the Russians are classical professional diplomats. They have a very strong diplomatic corps, and I talked to several Russian diplomats who say, we want a meeting, we want this Trump-Putin summit, but we want an agenda that is fully worked out in advance, so it wouldn't get derailed by this kind of spontaneous nonsense that happened in the White House. And this is very much Trumpian style, of course, play it, shoot from the hip. But the Russians, I don't think, will stand for that. So we may well get a meeting where Trump and Putin work out a blueprint for peace in Ukraine. It'll probably be a lot of Russian points. I mean, the Russians are winning on the battlefield. It is just obvious at this point. And they will, and if they don't get a deal, they're prepared to continue. The mathematics are in their favor down the road. And so the Russians will just keep pressing until they get it their way. But from what I can read, the Kremlin attitude right now is, we want certain things, certainly neutrality, Finlandization, if you will, of Ukraine, substantial demilitarization. This is something they were arguing about in that first set of negotiations back in 22.
Okay.
And rights for Russian speakers in Ukraine, language rights, and other cultural. So what I think the Russian idea is, Ukraine can be neutral, it can be independent, it can, it can have its doors and windows open to the West, but it has to be in crucial ways in the Russian sphere of influence. Now, that I know that just grates on the ears of everybody in the West, the idea that Russia wants Ukraine in its sphere of influence. I know, but they do, and it's their backyard. I mean, what if, like, Mexico wanted to join a Chinese-led military alliance? Okay. How would that go down in Washington? So it's just a fact, and it is not the worst possible fate for Ukraine. And I think it's on the table, ready to be negotiated. If Trump will go with it, and Putin will go with it and make some big concessions. I think if those two countries, Russia and the United States, agree on a blueprint, it's going to be pretty hard for anyone else, Europe or Zelensky, to oppose it.
But the question is, can that really happen? Now, Peter Kuznick, the question also is, why did this verbal clash really happen? Was it a trap? Because Trump, in fact, had claimed that $350 billion have already been given to Ukraine. But as per a U.S. government's report, Trump, in fact, has appropriated, U.S. has appropriated, Congress has appropriated $174.2 billion since 2022. Something that has been confirmed by the Ukrainian government as well. So do you think perhaps Zelensky was right in putting his foot down?
Zelensky was right in a moral sense and a truth-telling sense. He was wrong in a diplomatic sense, given who he's dealing with. He's not dealing with Joe Biden. He's not dealing with Barack Obama. He's dealing with Donald Trump. And you have to deal with Donald Trump in a different way. Trump is emotionally a child. You see the way people come in there and they flatter him, and they're willing to put up with so much of his bullshit, really. But Zelensky is not in that position right now. But Trump was ready for this. Look at what he's been saying during the week. He said Zelensky's approval rating is 4%. It's over 50%. He said the United States has given $350 billion. The United States gave maybe half that much, if that. He said that Zelensky is a dictator. He said that Ukraine started the war. I mean, there's so much. So and Trump is still bitter about what happened during his first term in his relationship with Zelensky in Ukraine. So Trump was ready to explode, and Vance triggered it. Vance has been pretty much of a non-entity. Other than voicing his support for fascist forces in Europe, he's been relatively quiet lately, and he wanted to get some of the limelight. So he started this, and then when Zelensky responds, then he says, we're not here to litigate this on television. Well, he's the one who started it, and then Trump jumps in. And the point, and the idea that Zelensky wasn't showing enough gratitude is childish again. So you're not dealing with diplomats. As Fred was saying, in the upcoming meeting between Putin and Trump, the Russians are going to make sure that this is actually planned in advance in a responsible way. They're not going to let this kind of clown show, as Fred said, happen again. And is it possible to get an agreement? I hope so, because the world needs it right now.
Okay, Dr. Swasti Rao, do you think now every leader before meeting Donald Trump will think twice, will, read everything, prepare everything, and then perhaps come in front of the media, given what we saw? And also, do you believe that it was indeed some kind of a trap somewhere? Because even the numbers that Trump was talking about were not correct.
Well, Trump has always been giving these numbers. There is also a study on how many times he's lied in the first term and how many times he's lying in the second term. So I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's quite impressive. It's to the tune of, a few thousands, at least, times that he has been on record said things which are completely untrue. He has not given $350 billion of aid to Ukraine. There are a lot of things out there which are not true. The approval ratings, somebody made a mention of that. Of course, that's not true either. So there are a lot of things. That said, yes, dealing with Trump, it does require one to understand psychologically how to put, one's case. I think I totally agree with that, because end of the day, you are not dealing with rational actors. The way he kept on, in fact, I think Donald Trump himself probably doesn't know that most of these rare earths are actually located in the occupied regions. So by that definition, does he mean that he's serious about liberating those territory for Ukraine? Yesterday, he also said something very controversial. He said that he would help Ukraine liberate Mariupol if the deal is signed. So I think we should take Trump seriously, because he of course heads the United States of America. He is right now, for good or for bad, the most powerful leader in the world. So we have to take him seriously. I would not take him literally, because he has in the last 1 week alone, the way he has gone back and forth and his flippy floppy style of diplomacy. I think if we sort of read too much into it, it'll be, disastrous to anybody that has more sensibility. I mean, I myself count in that particular segment that I'm quite done and dusted with how many times I've had to sort of go back and forth over what he has said. But that said, on a more serious note, I would wait. I am quite sure that the Russian side would try and make as much use of this particular vulnerability that they have now seen, and especially now the way that talks with Zelensky, kind of took that very ugly turn. That's it. Do agree that it is in America's interest, long-term interest, to actually support Ukraine, because it is in their commercial interest. So I think sooner than later, the deal is going to be back on table. Ukraine needs it too. Zelensky would probably do his homework as well. And I think we are up for some more action before any kind of ceasefire or any kind of, de-escalation of violence is seen. Because for now, there is no de-escalation happening. I don't even agree with the fact that Russia has some so-called advantage because by all meters, by all metrics, do you remember the number of months they've been taking to actually take one village? So, we here do a lot of assessment of just how good or bad has been Russian advance, and it's been painfully slow. So I think Russia also needs some kind of deal. So I think you have these three parties, all of them need a deal. It's just that the art of deception is also taking over, and perhaps Zelensky has to better his, skills in that respect. So.
Absolutely. Ambassador Sajjanhar, where do you stand on it? Do you think Zelensky was right in putting his foot down? And also I want to ask you how we know that Trump is pushing for about 25% tariff on EU nations. Can Europe, the way Europe is rallying behind Zelensky right now, can actually go against US, the United States of America, that is led by Donald Trump and not Joe Biden this time?
Yeah, so your first question was, where did, if Zelensky went wrong? I think both the sides committed mistakes. And, when you are going in for that, as I said, there was a slip of the tongue as far as Zelensky was concerned, and immediately realized it, and he retracted his statement, but he was not allowed to retract his statement. So, meaning it is like this as it happens. You have to in terms of preparing well, etc., what is said. We've had 4, 5, 6 leaders who have come. We've seen Benjamin Netanyahu come. We have seen the Japanese Prime Minister. We've seen the Jordanian King, Prime Minister Modi, Macron, Starmer. They've all come. They know how to handle Trump. And so I think in that context, maybe this was not really the occasion to speak so much in front of the media. And I think that was a little bit of a mistake that was made by Mr. Zelensky. But then I can also see that, he's been fighting this war for the last 3 years, and he's had his back to the wall. People might say that, he's getting weapons from the United States and Europe, etc. But he's literally been fighting with his hands tied behind his back, because whatever is given, he's not given any air support. Whatever is given to him, it said, it's only for defensive purposes. You should not be able to sort of, go into Russian territory, etc. There's so many things. So one has to admit that the man is under pressure, is under huge pressure. So he made this mistake. It is not a crime. It's not a sin, but the way in which he was taken down by JD Vance and also President Trump, I think that was insulting and humiliating. And, looking at, meaning Trump is the most important, most powerful leader in the world. So I think there should have been, and, he also calls himself the master of the art of the deal. And this was a deal that he wanted. He said it so many times that there are billions and billions for American people and so on and so forth. So I think he should have really, they should have been able to patch up. But I think that, cooler heads and more sense will prevail going forward. And this is what we are going to see, in my view. I think things should settle down, because people will realize that it is to their interest. Let me also put it this way, if all the others are interested, Europe would also be one of them, which is very keenly interested. Zelensky is interested in a ceasefire because, after all, it is Ukraine which is suffering. But of course, he wants it in terms of on what terms and conditions. It has to be a fair and just deal. I will not comment on what Fred has said as the bottom line on which the Russians would be prepared. But I think it has to be on a fair and just provisions. And this is what the Europeans would also like, that we have to have a ceasefire, because after all, they are also supporting your map you just showed.
Right.
I think it is about, and Macron said we are paying 60% of the bill as compared to 40% by the United States. So they also want to stop doing that and want to start focusing on their own economies, which are not doing too well. And if there is a ceasefire, and I sincerely hope so and wish so and think that it will be there not too distant a future, then if these sanctions are also removed and if energy starts flowing into Europe, both from the United States as well as from Russia, I think that will take some of the pressure off Europe. So, to your second question that you said, I think Europe definitely will continue to try and do what the manner in which it can help Ukraine and President Zelensky, but they have their limitations. And I think that is what they are very conscious of, that they have limitations, and that is why all of them also want America on their own side.
Absolutely. They do have limitations. And I want to give the last word now to Volodymyr Solovyin and Peter Kuznick. And I just have one question for both of you. Volodymyr Solovyin, to you first. The question is, who will really blink first? Because one thing, as we've understood after listening to all the guests here, is that both of them, Trump as well as Zelensky, they both need this rare minerals deal to actually happen. The question is, who will bring them back on the negotiation table? Will it require a mediator, or the kind of post we've seen coming from Zelensky? He himself will, after a few days, perhaps come out with a fresh sort of, terms of agreement or something of that sort. Volodymyr, to you first.
Yeah, I think at first European leaders will try to calm down the situation and bring back Ukraine and the United States to the negotiation table and at least sing this agreement, because it is beneficial for both sides and will provide for the President Trump an agenda to continue supporting Ukraine. Not maybe with American credits, but with European monies, which will be put into production of weaponry in the United States and then deployed to Ukraine. So that is the beneficial for both sides of the agreement. And as we witnessed, Prime Minister of Italy, Meloni, initiated the summit between European Union and the United States. So I think that the first step will be to negotiate between the United States and Europe. And after that, I think somewhere maybe on a neutral territory, both Presidents Zelensky and Trump may meet again and finalize the agreements. Maybe it will be signed between ministers, not on the presidential level, but sooner or later, I think that this disregard will be solved.
Okay, Peter Kuznick, last 10 seconds.
Well, I think that this is much more of a win for Trump in his mind because he's playing to the MAGA base and they love what he did. The rest of the world might look askance at what he did, but in terms of his base, they support this. While for Zelensky, this was a disaster, I think, a real setback. So Zelensky is going to need to take the initiative now because Trump is happy with what happened.
Okay, interesting. Interesting views we got on the debate tonight. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us here. Dr. Swasti Rao, Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, Fred Weir, Volodymyr Solovyin and Peter Kuznick. Appreciate all of you for joining us here on this edition of the News Hour this Saturday evening. We will slip into a very, very short break. Second debate on the other side. Stay with us.